Most people spend their lives asking for the thing they think will finally make them feel secure. More money, more status, more control, more time. But Solomon was offered all of it, and he asked for something almost nobody asks for anymore: wisdom. And that is what makes his story so uncomfortable. Because Solomon did not become powerful by chasing power. He did not become wealthy by worshiping wealth. He became the man everyone remembered because he understood something modern culture keeps forgetting. If you build your life on the wrong desire, success can still leave you empty. So today, I want to walk you through 3 lessons from Solomon that are not just ancient religious ideas. They are psychological survival tools for anyone trying to make better decisions, build a meaningful life, and stop chasing things that never actually satisfy. And the 3rd lesson may be the most important, because it explains why the wisest choice often looks foolish to everyone else. Let us start with lesson number 1. Wisdom begins by admitting you know nothing. Now, I know that sounds like some fortune cookie nonsense at first glance, but stay with me because this is deeper than you think. When Solomon became king, he was young. Some scholars believe he was barely 20 years old. He had just inherited the throne from his father David, one of the most legendary rulers in history. The pressure was enormous. An entire nation was watching. Enemies were circling, and Solomon had to step into shoes that seemed impossible to fill. So what did he do? He did the one thing that almost no leader in history has ever done honestly. He admitted he did not know what he was doing. When God appeared to him and said, "Ask for whatever you want," Solomon essentially said, "I am like a child. I do not know how to lead these people. I do not know how to tell right from wrong in the situations I am going to face. Please give me an understanding heart." Think about how radical that is. In a world where everyone is pretending to have all the answers, where social media is filled with people acting like experts on things they learned about 15 minutes ago, Solomon teaches us that the doorway to real wisdom is humility. You cannot fill a cup that is already full. And most of us walk around with cups that are overflowing with opinions and assumptions and ego, and we wonder why we never seem to grow. Here is the practical takeaway. The smartest people in any room are almost never the ones doing the most talking. They are the ones asking the most questions. They are the ones who say, "I do not understand. Explain that to me." They are the ones who treat every conversation like a classroom. Solomon understood something that neuroscience has confirmed thousands of years later. The brain literally cannot absorb new information when it believes it already has the answer. When you think you know, your mind closes. When you admit you do not know, your mind opens. And that open mind is where wisdom lives. So if you want to start applying this today, try something simple. The next time you are in a conversation and you feel that urge to jump in and prove how much you know, pause. Ask a question instead. Listen to the answer. Let yourself sit in the discomfort of not being the smartest person in the room. That discomfort is actually the feeling of growth. Solomon would tell you that feeling is the beginning of everything. Now let us move to lesson number 2. And this one might sting a little. All striving without meaning is chasing the wind. Solomon wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, and honestly, it reads like the journal of a man who achieved everything the world says you should want, and then realized it was all empty. He tried pleasure. He threw himself into every form of entertainment imaginable. He tried accumulating wealth, and he became richer than anyone alive. He tried massive building projects, creating architectural wonders that people traveled from distant lands to see. He tried intellectual pursuits, studying everything from botany to zoology. And after all of it, his conclusion was devastating. It was all meaningless, like chasing after the wind. Now, before you think this is depressing, understand what Solomon is actually saying. He is not saying that work is pointless or that ambition is bad. He is saying that striving without purpose is what destroys people. He is saying that when your only goal is more, when you are just climbing for the sake of climbing without ever asking why, you will reach the top and find nothing there. This is incredibly relevant right now. We live in a culture that worships hustle. Grind culture tells you to work 18 hours a day, sacrifice your health, sacrifice your relationships, sacrifice your sleep, and someday you will make it. But make it to where exactly? Solomon had all of it. He was the richest man alive. And he looked at everything he had accomplished and said, "This did not satisfy me." The lesson here is not to stop working hard. The lesson is to make sure your work is connected to something that actually matters to you. Not what society says should matter. Not what your parents say should matter. Not what some influencer on the internet says should matter. What actually matters to you when you strip everything else away? Ask yourself right now. If you achieved every single goal on your list, would you feel fulfilled? Or would you just create a new list? Because Solomon discovered that the hedonic treadmill is real. No amount of external achievement can fill an internal void. The person who finds meaning in their work, even if that work is simple and quiet and never makes them famous, that person is richer than Solomon ever was. And Solomon himself would agree with that statement because he literally wrote it. The practical application here is to pause the grind long enough to examine your motives. Write down your top 3 goals. Then next to each one, write down why you are pursuing it. If the why is just because it sounds impressive or because everyone else is doing it, or because you are afraid of what people will think if you do not, those are warning signs. Real purpose has a different feeling. It feels like alignment. It feels like even if nobody ever noticed or applauded, you would still do this thing. That is the kind of striving that not chasing the wind. That is the kind that actually leads somewhere. Now here is lesson number 3, and I told you this would be the one that hits different. The best decision is often the one that feels counterintuitive. There is a famous story about Solomon that almost everyone has heard. 2 women come before him, both claiming to be the mother of the same baby. There is no DNA test, no witnesses, no evidence. It seems like an impossible situation. And Solomon says, fine, cut the baby in half and give each woman a piece. Now every logical person in that room must have been horrified. This seems cruel and absurd. But Solomon was not actually going to cut the baby. He was using a counterintuitive strategy to reveal the truth. The real mother immediately said no. Give the baby to the other woman, just please do not harm him. The liar said, sure, go ahead, divide him. And in that moment, everyone knew who the real mother was. The solution that seemed insane on the surface was actually genius. This principle applies to your life more than you realize. Sometimes the best move is the one that makes no sense to everyone around you. Leaving a high-paying job because it is killing your soul sounds crazy to most people. Walking away from a relationship that looks perfect on paper but feels wrong in your gut sounds foolish. Choosing rest when everyone else is grinding sounds lazy. Forgiving someone who does not deserve it sounds weak. But Solomon shows us that surface-level logic is not the same as wisdom. The crowd will almost always push you toward the obvious answer. Wisdom often lives in the answer nobody else would choose. Think about the biggest regrets people share at the end of their lives. They almost never say, I wish I had played it safe. They almost never say, I wish I had done what everyone expected. The regrets are almost always about the counterintuitive path they were too afraid to take, the risk they did not pursue, the truth they did not speak, the unconventional choice they talked themselves out of because it did not make sense on a spreadsheet. So here is my challenge to you. What decision are you facing right now where the obvious choice feels safe but wrong, and the scary choice feels terrifying but right? Because there is a very good chance that the terrifying option is the wise one. Solomon would tell you to trust that instinct. Not blind impulse, not recklessness, but that deep quiet knowing that whispers this is the way even when the whole world is pointing somewhere else. So let me bring this all together. Admit what you do not know, attach meaning to your ambition, and do not be afraid of the choice that scares everyone else. These 3 principles transformed Solomon from a terrified young king into the wisest man who ever lived. And they can transform you too if you are brave enough to actually live by them. The question is not whether these lessons are true. History has proven that already. The question is whether you will apply them starting today. I think you will. And I think a year from now, you will look back at this moment and realize this was when everything started to shift.